exploring the different themes in my upcoming book, Gate 7, coming out very soon. This week, though, we're going to talk about the weight of grief. As I was writing Gate 7, there are some passages in the book that talks about grief, and I thought it was important for me to mention and maybe have a conversation with everyone about grief. So let's define grief and let's try to look at it from a spiritual and emotional lens. Okay? So grief is not just the aftermath of loss. Grief is this shape that absence can take, and it moves into our lives and often doesn't leave right away. Spiritually, when you look at grief, it's a pause. It's almost like the rupture of our soul, the rupture of the rhythm of our soul. It's a moment where we feel completely lost and things are just suspended. We don't know quite what to do during that moment. But when you look at it from a spiritual standpoint, even through that grief, there are pockets of moments where we can see God's grace and we can understand that the promises that we receive in the scripture, that God is this very present help in moments of hardship, we can see that if we pause during that moment of grief. So over time, in a very unexpected way, if we allow the Lord to move in, we can then see how He can step in and bring us peace and comfort without sometimes explanation. We'll see it in peace that doesn't necessarily match the circumstances that we are experiencing, a gentle presence that just holds us together. And sometimes it may not make sense, but because we are trusting the Lord and we are grieving the loss of whatever it is that we lost, we are grieving in His presence, we can find room for His peace. Now, emotionally though, grief is, I think, 1,000 things at the same time. Grief is not just one thing. It's anger, it's confusion, it's numbness, and sometimes it's this unbearable sadness. You don't know what to do with it, and sometimes it's nothing at all. Sometimes grief is just silence, just sitting in that moment where something is no longer there. And I think there is not a single language for it. It's only its presence, its weight, and maybe that's why it's hard to carry it. Maybe that's why it's hard, because we can't define it, we can't see it, we can't necessarily touch it. It's invisible, but it's very heavy. It's personal but universal at the same time. It's something that we can often recognize, and if we understand that it's there, then maybe we can better deal with it and let the Lord help us through it, or let our support system around us help us through it. And as you will discover in the book, I touch about grief for a little bit, and it's a very complex situation, but it shows us how sometimes there can be some collateral beauty even in the most unexpected and painful situation. Now, how does grief shape our identity and faith? Grief doesn't just come to take something, okay? It stays to change something. It doesn't come to remove something only, but it comes to alter everything after what has been removed from us is gone. So after a loss, the world keeps moving, right? We don't feel the same inside. We don't feel like, the same in our own skin. The smallest things are different, definitely. A familiar voice is missing in the conversation. An object that didn't have no meaning before now has a tremendous meaning because there is absence attached to it, like a chair where someone used to sit down, and now the person is no longer there, so the chair is empty. So we understand that in the space where something was, now there is just an echo. We don't necessarily identify with what was before because it's gone. So it shapes who we are, and it can really challenge our, it can challenge our identity, it can challenge what we think was, it can challenge what we thought will be. We can ask questions like, who am I now? Who am I after this is gone? Who am I now that this has been removed from me? Who am I now without this person? If you've lost someone who was very dear to you, how do you move on? How do you move on without certainty? Because sometimes someone's presence or the presence of a certain situation can bring certainty to us. But when that's gone, it would challenge how we feel. It challenges even the plans that we want to make. How can we continue without the story that we thought we were still living? Because we make plans, we have dreams. How do you continue? And when you look at how grief can challenge our faith, faith also doesn't escape it. In fact, it's sometimes it's where the questions get even louder. When you are going through this grief, you have deep questions about your faith. What do I believe? Why should I believe God now? Or what am I believing God for? It's louder. Those questions comes, you're wondering, what is it about love now that I can no longer experience it? Or what is the meaning of this? So grief has the power to really dismantle our belief. But I believe it also has the power to deepen it, because we get to now visit some questions that are deep in our soul that we can revisit. And I will tell you, it may not be pretty, it may not be very neat, but it's raw, it's vulnerable. And grief has no interest in surface faith. Grief has no interest with things that are superficial. I'm telling you, it wants the real. It wants the raw. Grief will come and question things that were not deep in your core, because it is not really about the superficial things, but about really what you really believe. So grief will come and challenge something that doesn't have roots in your life. So it will challenge our identity and our faith as well. Now, another question that we may ask ourselves is, can faith and pain coexist? That's a question that many people ask. Can I believe in something greater than I, but at the same time experience this pain that's constantly challenging me and changing who I am? There is this unspoken belief sometimes that pain means our faith is failing. Let me say that again. We think that when we're experiencing pain or doubt, that our faith is failing. As if when we are hurting and when we are doubting, that means that we are somehow compromising our faith. I don't think that's correct. Faith and pain can absolutely coexist. They have room for each other. As a matter of fact, if you look at different stories in the Bible, since we're talking about faith here, there are scriptures where you see that faith and pain, courage and fear, trusting God and doubting were in the same room at the same time. When you read David's Psalms, you can see how afraid and trusting he was at the same time. Job's questions to the Lord, he believed in God, he trusted him, but then he had all these questions about, why am I going through all of this? And then, of course, Jesus himself weeping for Lazarus' death, though he knew resurrection was coming. God knows everything. He knew that Lazarus would be resurrected, but again, he wept, because sometimes pain and faith can really be in the same place. So you can experience faith and grief at the same time. Grief doesn't cancel our faith. It tests it, yes, it refines it, I should say. And sometimes it will deconstruct it to reconstruct it or make it completely different, absolutely. So there are moments in Gate 7 where my characters are in that full tension where you're experiencing pain, but then you have to believe that something better is there for you, that you are experiencing the loss of something that you really valued, but at the same time, you've been introduced to something else that's supposed to be valuable to you. So they are constantly in that tension, and I think sometimes they want to scream, sometimes they want to stop, sometimes they want to cast away the beautiful things that are coming their way because they feel better to sit in that grief. Because sometimes grief may feel more comfortable, maybe like a comfort zone for us instead of embracing the beauty that might be introduced to us beyond the grief. So when you read my book, you will see that there are places like that where the characters have to make a choice to either dwell or move on. But again, grief is this thing that just doesn't go away. It just changes who we are. So, can we allow grief to refine us, to define us? I think grief will mark us. Yes, it's not optional. It will mark us. It will leave a mark. It will do something to our hearts, to our mind, to our bodies sometime. But I believe that we decide where its influence lasts. We decide what it does to us. Does it has to become our new name? Not necessarily. Does it has to become our identity? I don't think so. Some grief don't fully leave. Certain things will always be the same. Certain things will never come back to us. Certain things we'll have to say bye to forever. They will not come back to us. However, we can decide how that absence changes us or how that absence influences or alter who we are. So you will see that sometime as you are letting yourself grieve and accepting what you have lost and giving room and opening yourself to something new, then you can also realize that you are birthing more compassion in you. You are birthing more grace. You are being taught to appreciate certain situations because now you understand how less time we have. And grief will do that. Grief is an amazing teacher if we could look at it that way. And in Gate 7, you will see that though we are touching the topic of grief very briefly, it is changing our characters. It is teaching them how to look at life a certain way. And I think what's interesting, and I hope we get to see that as you're reading the book, is how it can affect people differently. One of the character, grief is pushing them a little bit backwards, and the other one is pushing them forward. And I think all of us, we experience things like that. Some people, when they are in deep moments of pain, they like to pause a little bit longer and stop and reflect. And sometimes it pushes them backwards and it pushes them to reflect a lot on the things that they've lost. But in others, when they experience grief, it pushes them forward. It makes them realize that they don't have much time like they thought maybe they had. And I think that tension is very clear as you will be reading Gate 7. So, writing about the pain, it's not easy. You sit with it, you reflect with it, you try to understand it, you try to look at it, because grief is not something that you can slide under the rug and forget about it. It pops at moments that we don't expect, with a song that you hear or a perfume that you smell, or in a conversation somebody will say something and then it comes right back in. So we have to learn to walk with it, to grow with it, and accept the challenges that it's bringing so that hopefully we can come out on the other side better. So myself as the author of this book, I felt challenged by those characters, and I felt challenged by their stories and what they were going through. Writing about their pain made me sit down also with my own, trying to understand how they're dealing with theirs, how did I deal with mine. It reminded me that grief is not just about what we've lost. It's not just about the things that are missing, but it's also about what we are still longing for. It's also about the hope that we may have for tomorrow, the hope that we may have, that we may embrace for being healed and moving forward. So maybe that's the quiet gift. I know it might be tricky and triggering for some, but maybe that's the quiet gift of grief. It doesn't leave us where it found us. It doesn't leave us with that empty place, that emptiness or that absence that we're experiencing, but it shows us a new facet of our faith. It shows us new ways to look at life, to look at time. Sometimes in some circumstance, it even deepens our empathy for people, for some situations. Sometimes it will help us to slow down, especially for some of us who live in this fast-paced society. We're always on the go. Grief will force you to slow down. It will force you to gently look inward and reevaluate the things that you've been giving value to. So it opens us up for other things that maybe we would have not thought about if it wasn't for the grief that we're experiencing. So I'm hoping that through Gate 7 that some meaningful conversation can be triggered about grief. And I am no expert, but I will say definitely that it is not something that just comes and disappears. It is there to stay, but it's not there to bury us. Rather, it's there to challenge who we are, to challenge the things that we value, and maybe help us then reevaluate what we do. So, I hope you get to read Gate 7 and enjoy it, and also appreciate, like I said, the conversation that can rise through this topic.